The rain hadn't let up for hours. The streets of Los Angeles were slick with memory, gray, glistening, and familiar in a way that made Johnny's heart ache. The city never really changed, just recycled itself. Like grief, like guilt. Johnny Depp, now 61, sat alone in the back of a dark SUV, watching raindrops streak the tinted windows. Dressed in his usual understated way, black leather jacket over a charcoal button-down shirt, faded jeans, and scuffed brown boots. He looked every bit the man the world thought they knew. But today wasn't about the man on magazine covers. It was about a son, and a woman who hadn't been alive for 2 decades. The car slowed in front of a modest craftsman-style home nestled in Laurel Canyon. This was the house. Not a mansion, not a getaway, just her house. His mother's, a place untouched since her passing, protected all these years like a frozen frame in time. He hadn't come here since the funeral, not once. His sister Christy had offered to sell it, but Johnny couldn't. He wasn't ready to say goodbye, not to her, not to the memories, not to what he thought was gone. Today wasn't about sentiment. It was about answers. He stepped out into the rain, pulling his jacket tighter. His long brown hair, streaked with gray, clung to his face. The air smelled like damp earth and jasmine, exactly how it used to when he was a boy sneaking in past curfew. Unlocking the old front door felt like breaking into a memory. Everything was still in place. The floral wallpaper, the crooked family photos, the upright piano she insisted they never sell. Time hadn't dared to touch any of it. But what Johnny didn't know, what he couldn't yet imagine, was that something was waiting for him. Something she'd left behind. Something that had been buried beneath 20 years of silence. He moved through the house slowly, hands brushing over furniture, like he was tracing the edges of his childhood. He paused at the mantelpiece, picking up a photograph. A younger version of himself, barely 12, standing next to her. Betty Sue Palmer, smiling like the world hadn't yet taught them pain. Betty Sue, fierce, complicated, loving in her own stubborn way. She worked 2 jobs, raised 4 kids mostly on her own, and believed in hard discipline and harder love. She wasn't perfect, but she was his. He made his way to her bedroom. The smell hit him like a punch. Old perfume, dust, and wood polish. The room hadn't changed. Her scarf still draped over the vanity, her reading glasses on the nightstand, the lace curtains fluttering softly in the rain breeze. Sitting on the bed, he stared at the closet. Something tugged at him. A memory, maybe, or intuition. He got up, opened it slowly. Her clothes still hung inside. Dresses she hadn't worn in years, even before her passing. He began removing boxes one by one from the closet shelf. Old tax papers, photographs, birthday cards from the kids. And then a small shoebox taped shut. His hands trembled as he peeled the tape. Inside, wrapped in a yellowed handkerchief, was an envelope. Addressed in her handwriting, for Johnny. When you're ready. He didn't open it right away. He couldn't. His chest tightened, breath caught halfway between sorrow and disbelief. His fingers clutched the letter as if it might vanish. Back in the living room, he sank into the old floral armchair she loved. Rain drummed on the windows like a heartbeat. The weight of the letter pulled at him more than its words ever could. He thought of her voice, stern but soft when it counted. You're not weak just because you feel, Johnny. But don't let your feelings cage you either. She'd always been like that. Brutally honest, almost cruel at times, but never without purpose. This letter, whatever it contained, wasn't meant to be easy. It was meant to change something, maybe him. With shaking hands, he opened the envelope. Dear Johnny, if you're reading this, then I'm long gone, and you've finally come back to this place. I knew you would. You were always a wanderer, but home has a way of calling us back. Not the house, the heart. There's something I never told you. Maybe because I was afraid. Or maybe because I didn't know how to explain it until it was too late. You always asked about your father, why he left, why he never wrote, why he didn't fight to stay. I told you he was a coward, that he didn't love us enough, but that wasn't the full truth. Johnny, he didn't leave us. I made him go. His breath hitched, eyes blurred. He hadn't expected this, not now, not after so many years of blaming a ghost. He read on. He wanted to stay, he wanted to raise you. But I pushed him away. I was angry, bitter and scared. Scared I wasn't enough. Scared you'd love him more than me. And he wrote to you. For years. Every birthday, every Christmas. Letters I never gave you. Because I couldn't bear it. Because I was ashamed. I've kept them. All of them. They're in the attic, in a brown suitcase with your name on the tag. You have every right to hate me. I wouldn't blame you. But I hope, when you're ready, you'll forgive me. And maybe find him. If he's still out there. Love always. "Mama," the letter slid from his hands and onto the floor. The room seemed to spin. Rain pounded harder outside, or maybe it just felt that way. 20 years she'd been gone, and all this time, the truth sat in a dusty attic, waiting for a son who never knew what he was missing. Johnny stood slowly, each step heavier than the last as he made his way to the attic. The stairs creaked like they remembered his footsteps. He pulled the chain to turn on the single bulb hanging from the ceiling. Shadows danced across forgotten boxes, old Christmas decorations, and then the suitcase. It was there, just like she said. Brown leather, cracked and aged, with a luggage tag that read, Johnny. He knelt beside it, heart racing, opened it. Inside, dozens of envelopes, all addressed in different handwriting. All to him. He picked one at random. Postmarked July 9, 1989. He opened it. "Happy birthday, son. I hope this finds you well. I know I don't have the right to say much, but I think about you every single day." The letter went on, soft, thoughtful, filled with the kind of fatherly love Johnny had only ever imagined. He wasn't ready for all of them. Not tonight. But he was ready for the truth. He sat there for hours, surrounded by the past. The weight of misremembered history pressed against him, and yet, it felt like something was being lifted. Grief wasn't a closed room. It was a hallway, and he had just found another door. Johnny stood up, suitcase in hand, and walked back down the stairs. Not just as a son mourning his mother, but as a man rediscovering pieces of himself long buried. Tomorrow he would begin again. Maybe even find his father, if he was still alive. But tonight, he would sit in the house of his childhood, read his father's voice, and forgive the woman who had loved him too much to risk losing him. It had been a week since Johnny opened the mysterious box in the attic, the one filled with faded photographs, brittle envelopes, and memories that had been tucked away in silence. The letter he had read from his mother haunted him. It wasn't just her words, it was her voice in those words. The way she still reached out from beyond, as if death hadn't broken the connection between them. He sat in his Los Angeles home, the same home where so many roles had been practiced, so many characters born. But this was different. This wasn't a script. This was real. And it was unraveling something inside him he hadn't expected. The letter hinted at things left unsaid. Regrets, pain, a secret. Something about a man named Walter who tried to make things right. And a summer in Kentucky that changed everything. Johnny decided it was time to go back. Not to the past, but to where the past had happened. Owensboro, Kentucky. His hometown. He pat lightly a black overcoat, dark jeans, a faded olive scarf his mother had knitted decades ago. It was one of the few things that still carried her scent. Earthy, smoky, like burnt cinnamon. When he arrived, it was dusk. The sky painted in soft pink and bruised lavender. The old Depp house was still standing, though barely. Boarded windows. A fence that leaned like it was tired of standing. But it was still there. So was the magnolia tree his mother used to sit under on warm evenings, smoking and humming old Patsy Cline tunes. He stood in front of the door, hand hovering over the rusted handle. This wasn't just a house, it was a museum of ghosts, of echoes, and he was finally ready to walk among them. Inside, the house smelled like time, dust, wood, and something forgotten. The floor creaked beneath his boots. Everything was just as he remembered it. The living room still had that crooked frame of his 10th birthday. The couch where his mother would fall asleep watching black and white films. The kitchen table with the scratch where he had carved his initials. And then he saw it. Another envelope. This time resting on the mantel, tucked behind a cracked photo frame. He took it with shaking fingers. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was hers. If you're reading this, you're not done yet. There's more to our story. Go to the lake house. You know the one? He did. It was the place she had taken him one summer when everything felt like it was falling apart. His parents had divorced. Money was scarce. And yet, that summer had been filled with laughter, with peace. To the lake house was an hour's drive. Johnny took his time, windows down. The scarf fluttered in the wind. He stopped for coffee at a diner just off the highway. The waitress, a kind woman in her 60s, looked at him with recognition, but didn't say anything, just gave him a warm smile and extra sugar packets. At the lake, the house looked smaller than he remembered. Age shrinks memories, but it still had that warm honey-colored wood exterior, still had the chimes his mom had bought from a flea market in Nashville. Inside, he found the dust-covered furniture, the smell of pine, and another envelope. This time, taped to the old record player. He opened it slowly. His mother's handwriting was less steady. If you're here, you remember. This is where I told you the truth. The one I couldn't keep inside. Johnny sat down, heart pounding. He remembered that day. Barefoot, sitting on the wooden floor, his mother in tears. She had told him about Walter. Not his father, but the man who had stepped in when his real father had left. She had loved Walter, but he had left too. Or at least that's what she had said. Now, he wasn't so sure. The next morning, Johnny walked into town. There was one man who might still know the truth. Earl, the town's oldest barber. The shop hadn't changed. The red and white pole still spun slowly outside. Earl was there, reading the paper, glasses at the tip of his nose. "Well, I'll be damned," Earl said. "Johnny Depp. In my shop. Thought I'd seen everything." Johnny smiled. "Hey Earl, you got a minute?" They talked. Earl remembered Walter. Remembered how he used to stop by every Saturday for a trim. He told Johnny something he didn't expect. Walter hadn't left. He'd been sent away. By Johnny's grandfather. "Didn't think he was good enough for your mama," Earl said. "Boy had a rough past. But he loved her. Everyone knew it." Johnny left the shop in silence. Everything he thought he knew was shifting. Back at the lake house, he poured himself a drink. Sat on the old porch. Listened to the wind through the trees. He pulled out all the letters. Laid them in a row. As if arranging her thoughts like puzzle pieces. That night he had a dream. His mother younger, laughing, holding his hand by the lake. She said, "Keep going. You haven't found him yet." He woke up with one name in his mind, Walter Cray. He would find him. The old mailbox creaked as Johnny Depp opened it. He stood still, gazing at the familiar shape of the weathered red flag, now lowered, like a final bow. No one used that mailbox anymore, not since his mother passed away 2 decades ago. But today, a letter sat inside, aged, yellowing. Sealed in a plain envelope addressed in his mother's handwriting. His breath caught in his chest. He walked slowly back into the house. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the wooden floorboards as he entered the living room. With shaking hands, he opened the envelope. "My dearest Johnny." He heard her voice. Not literally, but in the deepest part of his mind where the echoes of her lullaby still lived. He sat down, letting the weight of her words fall over him like a blanket. She had written it the night before she passed, explaining everything she had never been able to say out loud. Her regrets, her pride in him, her hope that one day he would understand the choices she made. Tears welled up in his eyes. He had lived 1,000 lives on camera. But this was the role he had never rehearsed for. Being the son of a woman who had always loved him, but hadn't known how to say it. The letter ended with, "And if you're reading this, Johnny, it means I waited until the time was right. Don't let this world harden your heart. Keep loving, no matter what." He folded the letter gently and pressed it to his lips. Later that evening, he returned to the porch where he'd read the first part of the letter. The sky was painted with streaks of orange and violet. He sat on the wooden swing, his guitar in his lap, strumming softly, like she used to when he was a boy. Lily, the teenage girl from next door, quietly approached. She had seen him from her window. "Mr. Depp." He looked up, surprised. I saw you playing. It reminded me of my mom. She passed last year." Johnny gave her a soft smile. "Come sit," he said, tapping the swing next to him. They sat in silence. Two souls joined not by blood, but by pain and understanding. Johnny handed her the guitar. "Play something." For her. She hesitated, then nodded. Her fingers trembled but found their place on the strings. As the music filled the space between them, Johnny realized what the letter had truly meant. This was the time. Not yesterday, not 20 years ago. Now, later. He placed the letter in a small wooden box, added a photo of him and his mother, and wrote in thick, blocky letters, "For Lily. When the time is right." He handed it to the girl without a word. 20 years from now, maybe she'd do the same for someone else.